It happens every preseason. We fall out of love with certain players in the SuperCoach community. Players that once have been absolute weapons for us, but in the new season, we just find a way to not pick them. We forget them, we prioritize others, and we see them fall distantly in the ownership areas. But just because a player is lowly owned doesn't mean their relevance for SuperCoach needs to be low in our consideration. I want to tell you 6 players I believe are criminally underowned in SuperCoach in 2024 to date. And at the very least, we need to have a conversation and a consideration about these 6 players. Number 1, Rowan Marshall. 6.8% of SuperCoaches are currently owning the guy that in 2023 was the 5th best scored option for us. He was the number 2 ruck option for us last year. He was a beast. But 6.8% at time of recording is criminally low. I understand the Grundy selection, the Gawn selection. Gosh, even Tim English at time of recording is only in 10% of sides. But 6.8% for the 5th best scorer? Are we devaluing him, or are we just elevating the value of what we think Grundy and Gawn will become? That's the interesting conversation. I'm not saying through this episode, you have to pick Marshall over Gawn. You have to pick, this is not a pro thing. Rather, it's just highlighting brilliant options that are so lowly owned that have you considered them? Is all I'm asking. We did an episode on Rowan in the 50 most relevant, this video and audio series that we did. You can go and check this video out on wherever this channel is right now that you're watching. It's YouTube, let's be honest. You can go and check that out, or wherever you get your podcasts from, you can simply search for and follow the coaches panel there to check it out. Great episode with Pig Mentality from the Dr. SuperCoach team. He's given you a great narrative and pathway in that episode about how and why you could start Rowan Marshall. And I'm inclined to agree that there's a really nice option for us there. Number 2, who have I got? Josh Dunkley. He's in just 4.8% of sides. Now, I understand he's got arguably the worst buy round for us, with Brisbane missing early games of football and heading into best 18. And I think if that's the reason why you've really faded interest in him, then I'm really okay with that. I understand why you don't want to pay top dollar or close to top dollar for a guy that really you're not maximizing early on, and it's just a simple trade or a correctional trade if he does pop. So I get that. But between round 5 and 15 last year in SuperCoach, he went at 130 before his injury hit. Took him a couple of weeks to find his feet in the new team. Then he's away. Priced at 115, there's 15 points per game of value. And that 130, if he can hold that over the season, that does 2 things for us. 1, that puts him as one of, if not the best scorer in the game. But 2, it's what we expected or anticipated could be his potential when he moved from the Bulldogs up to Brisbane because of the midfield role. There's no Will Ashcroft. They do need to start protecting Lachie Neale a little bit more as Dunkley becomes another rounded piece of this midfield. So to me, I understand why people have faded interest, but a guy that's at 115 and I think could push up to as high as 130, you gotta at least consider that. Third in my 6 players that I think are really criminally low in ownership for SuperCoach is Tom Liberatore, 3.8%. He was a top 10 midfielder for us last year, ranked 19th overall in SuperCoach for total points. And he's certain in this role in this Bulldogs midfield. There's so much we don't know. Where does Treloar sit in and around this? What does Harm's addition to this side do? Does he pick up some centre bounce opportunities? Does he stay as a high half forward? No Bailey Smith due to injury. Jackson McRae was in and out of this midfield mix, at least from a wing and a high half forward perspective. There's a lot we do not know, but what we do know is Tom Liberatore, despite being at 31 years of age, he will be in that midfield, winning contested football, getting elite first touch use and a hit out to advantage created for Tim English through Tom Liberatore's hands and smart decision-making. With the good runners and movers they've got along on the outside, let alone his captain in Marcus Bontempelli, the opportunities for scoreboard impacts, score involvements, and scoring chains are really, really high. And then if he doesn't happen to get his hands on the ball, he will tackle you to the ground. This guy is an absolute beast when it comes to the defensive-minded stuff. And so for me, if you're looking for a guy that most weeks is a vice captaincy or captaincy option, has got a relatively friendly fixture early days, and you do want to create some separation, he's under 4% of teams. You got to at least consider it. I understand why you might not go down that pathway. But if you just seen Libba and scrolled and just passed over and never stopped to ask yourself, why? Because I think that's what we've done in SuperCoach already this preseason. I understand why you're not doing it. I understand it, and I don't actually disagree with it. But if you haven't at least stopped, propped, and thought about what it might look like with Libba in your team, I think you're just jumping over a guy that last year was one of the best scoring options for us. And I don't see too much narrative of deviation for why that might move away drastically. Number 4, Loy Whitfield, another player that made his way into my 50 most relevant. We had Mitch Casey from the Ball Boys talk about this episode. Again, you can find it on YouTube or wherever you get your audio podcasts from. He's in just 2.4% of teams right now, averaged 93 last year. And it's pretty rare you have a guy that can go 100 plus across SuperCoach multiple seasons. And that's what he did in that back portion of last year when the Giants really got their game together. He scored big tons for us and averaged that 100 plus for us. So for me, yeah, again, another early buy hiccup might be the determining factor, much like a Josh Dunkley. But to me, proven performer, knows that he's a good user of the ball, gets involved in the score involvements, finds a way to hit targets at ease without even trying, has pedigree and history and now low ownership to really make it pretty easy for us and a really good fixture. Go and check out what this first 6 weeks, especially 2 weeks of the Giants role looks like and run. It's pretty good for a guy in his spot. So for me, if you haven't considered Loy Whitfield, you need to about face and correct it. Those are 4 players with criminally low ownership. Who do you think the final 2 will be? If you haven't joined our Patreon supporter group, I'd encourage you to do so. Our Patreons receive a bunch of different in-season and pre-season rewards, depending on the tier they get involved, whether it be the hidden group opportunities and chances to discuss stuff with not just other members within the Patreon, but also with the coaches panel to get what will be released soon, our draft rankings for the year, our cash cow guide. It's the Keeper League tiers that Kane and I do every year, or the in-season match and round reviews that come for our breakout and premium tiers, as well as a bunch of other awards. If you're not a Patreon of the coaches panel, we would love for you to just jump over and do that. All the details and the description of this episode. 2 more players left to go. Do you think you know who they are? This one might surprise. Clayton Oliver. 2% ownership right now. I know there is every reason in the world to not start Clayton Oliver. Had probably one of the most difficult off-season and pre-seasons you could ask for. Certainly didn't help himself at varying times and spaces, but is, at time of recording, back playing for Melbourne. His fitness base is not where it has been, but the club are desperate and bullish that if he can get back to his full health medically and physically and mentally, they are desperately keen to get him back into this midfield mix. The departure of an Angus Brayshaw through concussion-forced retirement has just meant the necessity for him to play through that midfield is even more important for a team that does have a relatively thin top end. It's a very, very good elite top end. Viney, you've got Petrarca and Oliver, but then you've got a bunch of role-playing guys that are handy, but probably lack the depth that might be contrasted to some others. So to me, I think Clayton Oliver is someone that's going to need some heavy movement, but the good news is this, twofold. One, how many guys that have gone 4 years in a row in SuperCoach have averaged 120 plus? I can tell you, it's a pretty low number, and Clayton Oliver's in that exclusive club. The second thing I can tell you is that the Demons play in opening round. So you actually get to look. You get a free hit at Clary to see what he's like. If he's playing like the Oliver you know, why not? Why not consider him as a prospect? Because there's not many that can score the way he does. And my goodness, he's good. And then last one in the mix, Nick Newman. 1.2% of sides, ranked by the end of 2023 as the number 7th defender by average and top 10 for points. Again, I see why the community's not too certain on him. That Carlton backline dynamic changed a lot towards the end of the year to open up that opportunity. And with the Zach Williams, if fit coming back into this, it does make some changes with a Doherty potentially spending a little bit more time back again in the half back line with some changes through this midfield dynamic. I get it and I see it and I understand why, but not enough conversation has been given to at least consider him. So Newman, Oliver, Whitfield, Liberatore, Dunkley, and Marshall. These are 6 players I would like to suggest to you are good options to consider and have shown based on 2023 and years prior that they are fantastic scorers for us, but all of them are criminally under-owned. Is there a good reason for it, for why you've passed them? If there is, comment below and let me know why you chose not to start any or all of these players. Be really interested to know who you've faded them for as well. You can comment in the description of this episode. Just comment below. Let me know. Can't wait to see it. In the description of this episode is where you can get in touch with us across social media. Follow us across all of those core platforms. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the Coaches Panel here on YouTube. We'd greatly appreciate it. You hitting that subscribe button and turning the notifications on. So as soon as a new episode drops, you get notified straight away. Hey, thank you so much for watching. We can't wait to be back chatting with you about not just SuperCoach, but all versions of fantasy footy as we head into the start of the 2024 season.